we are going to talk about the budget. Of course, Ram Mohan has given a very good introduction about the budget. I don't have to say anything more. We all know that budget is nothing but an statement. It's a statement of estimated receipts and expenditure for a financial year. It's an annual statement, annual financial statement of estimated receipts and expenditure for the financial year. Can I have the slides, please, Casey? Yeah. As I mentioned, it is the annual financial statement of estimated receipts and expenditure for the financial year. We have in government, we have two kinds of budget. Of course, every organization has a budget, whether it is a household or a private organization or a local body or a state government or the central government. Everyone prepares a budget. In the government sector, we have two types of budget, the revenue budget and the capital budget. So I will start from the basics so that the concepts are clear to you, all of you. The revenue budget includes government's revenue receipts and expenditure, while the capital budget includes capital receipts and payments of the government. Next, please. There are two kinds of revenue receipts, tax and non-tax revenue. The tax revenue, as the name implies, comprises corporation tax, income tax, customs, central excise, wealth tax, GST, service tax, etc. The non-tax revenue comprises interest receipts, dividends, profits, and external grants to the government. Major part of capital receipts are loans from public, foreign governments, and the Reserve Bank of India. Capital expenditure, about which we have been hearing a lot these days, is the expenditure incurred on development of machinery, equipment, buildings, health facilities, education, etc. Next slide. When we talk of the budget, we have to be familiar with certain terms which are very frequently used. One is the GDP, is the total value of goods and services produced within the geographic boundaries of the country during a specified period of time, normally 1 year. It is a very, very important indicator of the economic performance of the country. India's GDP, many of you may be aware, is now about $2.8 trillion US dollars. In terms of rupees, it roughly works out to about 200 lakh crore rupees. Mr. Ram Mohan mentioned about the growth rate, the GDP growth rate. Now we have to see that till about 1980s, between the 1950s and 1980s, 3.5%, which many experts derisively called the Hindu rate of growth. After the reforms, 1991 economic reforms, the growth rate also went up slowly. And in 2019-20, it was 4.2%. It was expected to increase further last year. But unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the GDP shrank considerably by about 9.6%. But it is expected, the government, the surveys say, and even the international financing organizations also say that it's going to be stepped up considerably in the next financial year. It will be about 8.6%. It may even go up to 10%. So that is about the GDP in India. There are also certain terms called deficits, the revenue deficit, the fiscal deficit, the primary deficit. Revenue deficit is the difference between the total revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. Fiscal deficit, this is another important term along with GDP. Fiscal deficit is very frequently referred to in all the discussions on budget. Fiscal deficit is the excess of total expenditure over total revenue. It is an indication of the total borrowings generated by the government. It is a very, very important economic indicator. And primary deficit is the difference between the fiscal deficit of the current year and interest payments on previous borrowings. Somebody was asking about deficit financing. One of the participants, I think, wanted to know about deficit financing. Why is it that we should borrow and then spend money like this? There's nothing wrong in borrowing. You see, even when we want to grow, we all earn salaries, but our salary will not be sufficient to meet some unforeseen expenditure or some capital expenditure. Supposing you want to buy a car, you have to borrow, take a loan, and then borrow, and then buy a car. You want to buy a house, you have to take a loan and buy a house. You have to celebrate a wedding in the family, you have to borrow, and then you have to spend. So there is nothing wrong in borrowing and spending as long as you repay the loans. And countries also borrow heavily. You may be surprised to know that the US debt, the America's debt today is 26.7 trillion US dollars. I said India's GDP is 2.8 trillion US dollars. America's debt is 26.7 trillion US dollars. And debt to GDP is also an important indicator. Debt to GDP ratio in US, it is as high as 129%. In India, it is 72.34%. China, it is 48.4%. Japan has the highest debt to GDP ratio of 234.18%. So all these countries, many of them are developed countries, they have borrowed heavily and they have spent to accelerate the growth process. So there is nothing wrong in borrowing and spending. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Mr. Desikan. Yeah. Now, I have always wondered why we attach so much importance to this budget. You know, it's after all, it is a document like any other government document. And people, write so much about the budget. There is so much discussion about the budget. I remember about 25, 30 years ago, the budget used to be presented on the last day of February at 5 p.m. And it was something which was looked forward to by everybody because there will always be some announcements. In those days, everything was decided in the budget. The prices of consumer durables like TV, refrigerator, washing machine, electric goods, electronic goods, they will be changed, with some tinkering here and there. The prices of fuel, diesel, petrol, taxes will be levied on alcohol and cigarettes, which was a very, very, standard item in every budget. And people also used to look forward to changes in direct taxes and corporation tax, income tax and corporation tax. The budget is significant for three main reasons. One is it delivers the balance sheet of the government, informs us what happened during the year and what is proposed to be done in the next year. It is an action plan for the government. Secondly, it shapes the macroeconomic environment of the country, how the decisions on raising resources and spending will impact the macroeconomy. You may remember that the Prime Minister talked about $5 trillion economy, $5 trillion economy, that India should become a $5 trillion economy by 2025. So that is the vision of this government. Where we stand now vis-a-vis this target and what all should be done, what decisions have to be taken to raise resources and how the spending will impact the macroeconomy. These are all answered in the budget. Thirdly, the budget also provides reform signals on which economic agents place their expectations. If you take the current budget, there was a thrust on infrastructure. The message is that there will be a lot of money will have to be invested in infrastructure, and the government is intending to privatize more and more undertakings and also disinvest in a few undertakings. Somebody wanted to know, you see, the government, this particular government, this NDA government, is very keen on infrastructure development. They announced in 2014 a National Infrastructure Pipeline, which is a group of social and economic infrastructure projects over a period of 5 years with an initial sanctioned amount of 102 lakh crores. That is the extent of money that will be pumped into this infrastructure pipeline. A number of projects have been identified. As many as 7,320 projects have been identified in various sectors: roads, railways, urban development, rural development, airports, ports, inland authority, etc. By emphasizing infrastructure, we are not sacrificing common good for the people. See, there is a misconception that, if you spend too much money on infrastructure, no, you will not be helping the poor people, which is a wrong thing, because infrastructure triggers development. So there is a lot of employment, there is a lot of economic activity, and there will be growth, there will be more job opportunities. So development on infrastructure is good for the economy. Next slide, please. Next slide. Now, coming to the budget 2021-22, normally in any budget document, you will find these 4 sets of figures. One is the actuals of the previous year, the estimates for the current year, the revised estimates of the current year, and the budget estimates for the next year. So here you will find that the revenue receipts, last year, it was expected that we will get about 20 lakh crores, 20.21 lakh crores. But what we got was about 5 lakh crores less because of the pandemic. But in spite of that, the current year's budget estimates show the revenue receipts as projected, the revenue receipts as 17.88 lakh crores. Capital receipts, here you will find a big jump in 2021. It is because of heavy borrowings. We had to borrow to spend because a lot of money had to be pumped into the system to increase the purchasing power of the people. So a lot of money was spent, so a lot of borrowing was made. About 12 lakh crores was borrowed last year. And the same amount is likely to be borrowed in the coming year also. Revenue expenditure, revenue deficit went up considerably last year by about 8 lakh crores. And the fiscal deficit also shot up correspondingly. It was estimated that the fiscal deficit will be contained at 3.5%, whereas the fiscal deficit went up to 9.5%. That is the estimate for the current year. Sorry. Next slide, please. Now, coming to the sectoral allocation in the budget, there are allocations are made to various sectors. You will find that nearly 20% of the money is spent on interest. There is a talk, there is an allegation rather, that the allocation to some sectors like defense, rural development, agriculture, etc. is very low. It's not adequate. And one of the questions that I received was whether land acquisition problems will not affect the implementation of projects in highway sector. Yes, to some extent, it may impact the implementation of projects in the highway sector, but I am sure the government would have factored in that aspect also while fixing the estimate. And the increase, and another question that I received was whether the increase in defense allocation, whether it is complementary to the growth complementary to growth or contradictory to growth. So I don't think it is neither. It's neither contradictory nor complementary. See, if increase in defense expenditure is warranted always. I mean, now with the neighbors like China and Pakistan, we have to strengthen our defense systems. So some increase in expenditure is definitely called for. But whether we like it or not, it has to be there. There is no other escape from it. And some sectors will have to sacrifice a little for increased spending in defense. I don't think it will impact growth very substantially. I would indicated, you say, compared to last year, how the allocation to some sectors has increased or decreased in the current year. This plus or minus symbol shows that in defense there was neither increase nor decrease. That is the only item where it was almost the same. But interest, transport, even agriculture and allied activities, there is a marginal increase. Next slide, please. Home affairs, education, finance, telecom and IT, union territory, social welfare, commerce and industry, external affairs, all these sectors, there is some marginal increase. But in all the other sectors, including fertilizer subsidy, food subsidy and all, there is a reduction. Even health sector, there is a reduction. Next slide. How is this sectoral allocation made? Please, previous slide, please. How is this sectoral allocation made? You may wonder. See, in the state government, what we did was, normally in the budget exercise will start in the middle of September or early October. We will ask all the departments to indicate. We will tell them what their budget estimate, what the expenditure for the previous year was, and what the budget estimate for the current year is. And we will ask them to indicate what schemes they want to, new schemes they want to implement, and how much they would like to spend on all ongoing schemes. And based on that, we will have discussions with the departments and internally among ourselves. And depending on the funds available, allocation will be made. So these allocations, they are not arbitrary. A lot of thinking goes into all these allocations. So it is not as if, the finance minister, because of her whims and fancies, gives 1,000 crores more to one department or 1,000 crores less to another department. It's not like that, because a lot of exercise is done before making these allocations. Next slide. Next, please. Now, if you see the government sector, the receipts breakup is like this. Revenue receipts constitute 59% of the total receipts. Income tax 14%, corporation tax. Here is another point I want to highlight is, some people say that, you should not get more money from income tax than from corporation tax. Income tax, after all, is paid by only a small percentage of people who are mostly middle class and upper middle class. Whereas corporation tax, they are big people, The government should take more money from the corporate sector than from the individuals. That is one line of argument. GST is 15%, excise duty is 8%, customs 3%, non-tax receipts about 6%. Borrowings, other liabilities 36%, non-debt capital receipts 541%. This is the breakup for revenue receipts. Next slide. Next slide is only a pictorial representation of this, which I took from the budget document. Borrowings 36%, non-debt capital receipts 5%, etc. Whatever was indicated there is shown in the picture here. Next slide, please. Next slide. Similarly, expenditure breakup. Interest payments take up 20% of the total expenditure. State share of taxes and duties 16%. Finance commission and other transfers 10%. Central sector schemes 14%. Centrally sponsored schemes where the expenditure is shared between the central government and the state government 9%. Defense 8%, pension 5%, subsidies 8%, others 10%. Total 100%. This is the expenditure breakup for the government of India. Next slide, please. This is again a pictorial representation of the same thing. Next. Next, please. Now, coming to the highlights of the budget. we find that there is increased focus on health and well-being in this budget. The second highlight is capital budget expenditure is set to increase to 5.5 lakh crores in next financial year from 4.39 lakh crores, which is more than 20% in the current year. There is significant increase in allocation for railways and road projects, especially in the states which are going for elections this year, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Kerala and Assam. 18,000 crores has been, a scheme has been announced to augment public transport in urban areas. Another important reform which the finance minister has come up with is increasing the foreign direct investment in insurance from 49% to 74%. At one time, there was a lot of opposition to making it even 49%. It was earlier, before that it was 24%. And then initial public offer will be, LIC IPO to be brought in by 21-22. One of the participants wanted to know whether after IPO also LIC will be under majority control of the government of India. I have no doubt whatsoever, because what the government will give by way of shares will only be a very small fraction of the total interest in the government. Next is all divestments announced so far, including Air India, BPCL, Concor, Pawan Hans, to be completed by 2022. Here I want to talk about little about this privatization and disinvestment. Some people want to know what is the difference between privatization and disinvestment. Privatization, as you know, is the process of transfer of ownership of a public sector undertaking to the private sector. Whereas disinvestment is the process in which the organization or government sells or liquidates its shares. And the difference is also that there is change in ownership in the case of privatization, whereas there is dilution of ownership in case of disinvestment. In privatization, the government share will be less than 50%, whereas in disinvestment, it will be more than 50%. And privatization will result in change in management, whereas disinvestment will not lead to change in management. There is also a fear that increasing privatization will lead to depriving poor people of their dues. This again is not well founded, because there are 277 central public sector undertakings in central government today. Only 26 public sector undertakings are to be sold 100%, entirely sold, including Air India, Shipping Corporation of India, BPCL, Bharat Earth Movers, Concor, that is Container Corporation of India, ITDC, Tourism Development Corporation, etc. And 21-22 budget says 2 public sector banks and 1 insurer will be disinvested. So one need not worry that because of this privatization, there will be loss of jobs and the economy will be affected, or the poor people will become poorer. All that is politics. People say all these things, but that is not so, because depending on the circumstances, depending on the times, what we are doing today would not have been thought of 20 years ago. Times have changed a lot. So, and after the reforms, a lot of developments have taken, economic reforms of 1991, the world has changed a lot. So therefore, some privatization is necessary to bring in more efficiency in the system. And so what the government is doing it very gradually. But there is no doubting the fact that privatization is an important item on the government's agenda. Privatization of public sector undertakings in non-strategic areas, not strategic areas. Next slide. There is also another scheme, a reform-based and result-linked scheme with an outlay of 3.06 lakh crore to be implemented over a period of 5 years for assisting power distribution companies, DISCOMs, in infrastructure creation, provide prepaid smart metering, and enable systems upgrade. Government also proposed to have 7 mega textile parks to be established in 3 years. Tamil Nadu also is hoping to get one textile park somewhere near Karur. Then vehicle scrapping policy is to be implemented. More than 15-year-old private vehicles and 20-year-old commercial vehicles. Oh, sorry, it should be the other way around. More than 20-year-old private vehicles and 15-year-old commercial vehicles will be subjected to fitness test. And someone was mentioning that whether it is good to have this policy at all, because we are very fond of our old vehicles. See, what we should look for is efficiency. Now, vehicles tracking, if a vehicle is more than 15 years old, I am sure that it's not going to run very efficiently. It is going to consume a lot of fuel and there will be a lot of pollution. So to reduce pollution, it is very important that we should have this vehicle replacement policy periodically. In companies, you will find that every 4 or 5 years they change vehicles. They get rid of their old vehicles and buy new vehicles. Another highlight of the budget is 1.5 lakh rupee deduction on payment of interest for affordable housing is to be extended by one more year. Social security benefits to be extended to gig and platform workers. Next slide, please. Now I'll come to a few sectors, not all sectors, a few sectors which are in the news for a little detailed analysis. The total outlay for health and well-being, the finance minister claimed that it is 137% compared to last year. Last year's allocation of 94,000 crores. The people argue, some people point out that this is only jugglery because what they have done is they have included the drinking water and sanitation departments 60,030 crore budget, nutrition departments 2,700 crore budget, financial commission grants of 49,000 crores, and then health outlay of 74,602 crores. All these have been added and brought under the heading health and well-being. The finance minister's counter argument is, one, when you say well-being, it includes drinking water and sanitation, which is also part of well-being. Nutrition also is part of well-being. So there is nothing wrong in bringing all these groups under the broad heading of health and well-being. I thought I would flag this so that you know what is happening. There is one introduction of Atmanirbhar health program with an outlay of 64,180 crores over 6 years. This will help 15 emergency centers and will also strengthen National Center for Disease Control in addition to the National Health Mission. The government is also planning to provide 35,000 crores for COVID-19 vaccination the current year. And the finance minister has committed to provide more funds if necessary. Jal Jeevan Mission Urban to be launched next year to provide universal water supply to all the 4,378 urban local bodies with 2.86 crore household tap connections, as well as liquid waste management in 500 Amrut cities. Amrut is Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. So those cities, 500 cities, all these will be provided with the universal water supply and liquid waste management facilities. Swachh Bharat Mission, that is a Clean India Mission. That is the second part will be implemented over 5 years from 2021 to 2026 for an outlay of 1.41 lakh crores. You may recall that it was initiated in 2014 to eliminate open defecation and also improved solid waste management. So this program will be continued, the solid waste management program will be continued in urban centers in the current year. Next slide, please. Now coming to agriculture, the government have imposed one cess, Agriculture Infrastructure Development Cess, to be levied over a dozen items, including gold, silver, alcoholic beverages, petrol, diesel, etc. That is to get additional resources for the farm sector. However, it has been made clear that the consumer will not have to pay because the basic customs duty or additional excise duty, whichever is relevant, will be reduced proportionately to equivalent to this cess. Now, one criticism of this proposal is that when you have a cess separately, it is not shared with the states. All the taxes, as per Finance Commission's formula, now it is 41% of the tax revenue is shared with the states. Now, if you take out a few items and impose a cess, so it will go only to that sector and it will not go to the state. To that extent, the states stand to lose revenue. So this was the criticism made by Tamil Nadu government and also Gujarat government and a few other Telangana government also. Agriculture infrastructure funds will be made available for the agricultural produce marketing committees for augmentation of their infrastructure facilities. 1,000 more mandis would be integrated into the electronic platform, e-Nam marketplace. Micro irrigation fund doubled to 10,000 crores. Agri credit target raised from 15 lakh crores to 16.5 lakh crores. These are some of the announcements made under this sector. Next slide, please. Now coming to road and rail infrastructure, this is another pet area for the government. Roads, I mentioned earlier briefly, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, West Bengal, they all stand to gain this year. 1.03 lakh crore for national highways works, 3,500 kilometers of highway works in Tamil Nadu. 25,000 crores for upgradation, national highways upgradation of 675 kilometers in West Bengal. 65,000 crore for 1,100 kilometers in Kerala. 34,000 crore additional grant for Assam. As far as railways are concerned, 63,000 crore for Chennai Metro, the second phase of Chennai Metro, and 25,000 crore for projects in West Bengal. The finance minister has also announced that more metro and urban buses on PPP model, public-private participation model, will be introduced. And Metro Light and Metro Neo technologies will be deployed because these will be cost-saving technologies. They will be deployed in Tier 2 cities and along the periphery of Tier 1 cities. Next slide, please. Micro, small and medium enterprises. Now, some small announcements have been made. Customs duty to be reduced uniformly to 7.5% on semi-flat and long products of non-alloy, alloy and stainless steel. Then duty exemption on steel scrap, anti-dumping duty to be revoked, duty on copper scrap to be reduced from 5% to 2.5%. So these are all small, concessions given to the micro, medium, small and enterprises. The definition also has been changed to give them more scope for taking loans. But there is no announcement regarding bank loan interest rate or GST reduction, which they were looking forward to. So to that extent, they feel aggrieved that they have not been given a fair deal in this budget. Next slide, please. Financial sector, quite a few changes have been being brought about. One is the major decision is a creation of an asset reconstruction company, or what they call a bad bank. The name doesn't sound good, bad bank, but it is a bad bank because it is taking all the existing stressed debt, consolidate and take over existing stressed debt, and then manage and dispose. They will manage the loans and then they will dispose of the assets also. And whatever net revenue they can get, they will earn that money. And government is proposing to permit, alternate investment funds to buy these bad loans. At present, these alternate investment funds are not being permitted to buy bad loans. And the government also proposed to have an asset management company to oversee these operations. And capital receipts, they expect to realize 1.75 lakh crores this year. I mentioned earlier that 2 more public sector banks and 1 general insurer will be privatized. Then a development financial institution with 20,000 crore as government equity will be established to catalyze infrastructure funding. Next slide. Now coming to direct and indirect taxes, there are no changes in personal income tax, which is a big relief for most of the taxpayers, most of the genuine taxpayers. It's a big relief. And then a small relief for senior citizens of 75 years and above. If they have only rental income and pension, they need not file returns, but they have to pay tax. That tax will be deducted by the bank, but they don't have to file returns, which itself is a big step. And then a faceless dispute resolution mechanism for small taxpayers will be set up. Filing of IT returns ought to be simplified. Most of the entries will be made automatically, and then you have to fill in only a few columns. Coming to indirect taxes, import duties have been increased for a number of items, ranging from mobile phone parts to auto components, leather, compressors used in ACs and refrigerators, tunnel boring machines used in metro construction, etc. And gold and silver import duty cut. Because of these increasing import duties, there's a feeling that government is encouraging protectionism. I mean, this government is committed to Atmanirbhar, so they want to have self-sufficiency as far as possible. So some concessions in customs duties and the import duties changes, they are natural corollary of this policy. Next slide, please. A critique of the budget. Some of the criticisms made against the budget. Given the past track record, the estimates of capital receipts from disinvestment and monetization of assets is unrealistic. People say that your estimates of capital receipts, you are saying 1.7 lakh crores will be achieved, will be realized this year, which is unrealistic because last year they were able to achieve only 15% of the estimate last year. But last year was an unusual year. But even normally, otherwise, you see, normally the government's targets, disinvestment targets are generally higher, and what achievement is lower. And the second allegation is that the assumption that GST collection will grow at 23% is very optimistic. But some people say that it is achievable, it's quite practical, and we have to wait and see how it goes. Another point which I had mentioned briefly earlier, the budget pegs personal income tax collection at 5 point, what is it? I don't know. Which is higher than the corporation tax, 5.47, I think, 5.3 or something, 5 point, I don't know. Okay, whatever it is, it's higher than the corporation tax collection at 5.47 lakh crores. This does not augur well for a developing country like India, where only a small percentage of individuals pay tax. Next slide. Next slide, please. Another major allegation is that INREGA allegation, that is this is a very important flagship program of the previous government and also this government. It's an employment generation program, especially in the rural areas. The allocation is down by 35% to 73,000 crores. Still, since rural employment is still very high and many migrants have not come back to urban centers, they say that this decline is too high. Agriculture allocation also is down by 35%, mainly due to reduction under food storage and warehousing heads. It was expected that a significant push will be given for creation of cold storage facilities. Probably the government thought that because of the reforms announced and the 3 acts passed, and the private sector will play a larger role in creating these facilities. And that is why the storage and warehousing under these heads, the allocation is probably less. And MSMEs feel let down that most of the demands have not been considered. Next point, next slide, please. Coming to the bouquets and brickbats, you will see some interesting reaction about the budget, which is usual every year. Now, the Prime Minister said that this budget has a special focus on strengthening the agriculture sector and boosting farmers' income. Villagers and farmers are at its heart. That's what the PM said in course of several other observations about the budget. Mr. Chidambaram, as can be expected, was very critical of the budget. He said it was a letdown like never before. This budget, like the previous one, will unravel sooner than you think. And he also said that that it's a budget for the rich people. And President of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Sri Uday Kotak, said it's a budget for growth with next generation reforms, focus on healthcare, infra, financial sector, a stable tax regime, higher borrowings for capex. Very laudatory terms. Generally the so-called captains of industry will hail the budget. Every budget they will say it is very good. They will hardly criticize any budget. Next slide, please. Now, Mr. Derek O'Brien is from the Trinamool Congress. He can be expected to be very critical. He always is. He says that the theme of the fake budget is sell India. Farmers ignored, rich get richer, nothing for the middle class, poor get poorer. And a middle class couple who were interviewed, they said this is a neutral budget with no big shocks or great cheer. So they are not affected. There is nothing for them. No big shocks, no increase in personal income tax, or nothing to cheer about because there is no reduction in any of these things. Petrol prices are going up every day, diesel prices are going up every day, so there is no cheer for them. But it's a neutral budget with no big shocks. Now, one must remember that the reaction to the budget was immediately after the budget was presented was very positive. The stock market gave a thumbs up to the budget. One of the questions referred to me was, what is the relationship between stock prices and economic growth? Whether there is any correlation between these two. You may know that the price of a share equals the sum of all future dividends. All future dividend payments discounted to its present value. That is what the share price represents. So higher stock prices provide useful information about the economic growth. Generally, the market is often regarded as a rational indicator of the state of economy now and also in future. So this is the relationship between because stock prices will go up and high depending on the sentiment in the market, because the market felt that it's a good budget, so it will boost growth, it will boost economic activity, it will help growth. So they give a thumbs up and the share prices, the stock index goes up. And next day if something else happens, the share prices will come down. So one cannot directly correlate this with the economic growth, but a good share price indicates that the health of the economy is generally good. So with this, I come to the end of my presentation. My next slide, please. The conclusion, balancing growth and fiscal deficit is a very, very difficult, it's a Herculean task, especially when the economy has been affected by a pandemic. The finance ministry has given precedence to growth in the current year and also in the next year. The structural reforms announced in the budget, including setting up of a development financial institution, introduction of vehicle scrapping policy, creation of bad bank, power distribution sector reforms, increasing the FDI limit in insurance, etc., would hopefully pave the way for a V-shaped recovery. V-shaped recovery means because the economy growth rate came down, now again it will go up. So it will be a V-shaped recovery. So the recovery in the shape of a V. So this is what we expect to happen in the next 1 year. Hopefully the effect of the pandemic will disappear soon and we'll have a lot to cheer about. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.